Welcome back. It's Frank Racz again, doing the follow-up on reels. I did spinning reels about 3 weeks ago, and I said there was going to be a follow-up to casting reels. So this is going to be for bait casting reels. Been sitting inside with cabin fever, just getting over kind of a head cold, sore throat thing. So if I sound a little different, that's why. But we're going to cover bait casting reels, kind of like what we did with spinning. And maybe I'll do a bait casting reel part 2 if I miss something. But I'll try to keep it concise, because there's just an awful lot that we can talk about with bait casters. But before I get started on casting reels, I just wanted to because I do have other viewers who are doing other types of fishing, or even more so than largemouth, which is my focus on my channel. If you actually look at Ralph Barton's channel, he's doing some really, I actually gave him a comment, he's doing the best multi-species for catfish, walleye, and trout that I'm actually seeing going for numbers. So if you want to look at his channel, it's really simple to do. Just look on mine, and his is on a related channel, Ralph Barton's. So I'll definitely give a shout out to him, because he's catching lots of numbers and lots of size of fish. So I'll get back to my channel and the reels, and maybe I'll get some walleye later on. I have a confession to make. I've never hooked a walleye. So back to the largemouth with bait casting reels. I'll kind of start out in chronological order from entry level to higher up. So for a starter reel, a lot of people wind up with the Abu Garcia Black Max, and this is an older gen entry level reel. This one actually seems to have more torque. This may be an aluminum frame. I think the newer one is composite. I'm not sure. But what you get on a $49.99 reel, years ago my first bait caster was a Abu like this, and I got this one because it had the flip and switch. They don't have that anymore now. Is you get good all-around performance with the Abu Garcia Black Max. The magnet is good. They get good torque in here, good cranking power, nice solid frame. They reel in line evenly. It's a good choice if you have $49.99 to spend and that's your budget. But I guess the downside is this magnetic control on the Garcias. I've never casted a newer Black Max, but it feels almost identical, and it's just not quite what some of your options that you can get for $69, $79. So for, or $59. So for 10, 20, 30 more dollars, you can get a lot more in terms of casting control than in something like this. But I would never talk anyone out of a Black Max, a starter Garcia reel for the $49.99 price point. You've even got a ported spool, so you just can't go wrong for $49. What I tend to recommend, and this is probably not going to come as a surprise to many people, is this is an older Gentile Laguna. This was the first one they came out for bait casting after they had retired the name for a while. I believe their regular entry level is called an RG. And their mag force casting control on here is just the best that I can even remember seeing. If you go on Tackle Tour, there's a Procaster reel, and they've got the same casting control on that. The review's, I think, 11 or 12 years old. So they've been using this on different reels for well over 10 years because it's easy and it works great for the money. I think I fished a whole season without any backlashes. But one thing you're going to get on an economy reel like this one happens to be a graphite frame. I noticed on some bigger fish there was some shake in there, and that's really important, just like on your spinning reels, but maybe even more so with bait casting, right? Because with bait casting reels, number one, we're running heavier lines. Number two, we're usually going after bigger fish. Number three, we're running stiffer rods. So the drag system and the gearing is getting pressed much more so than spinning in most instances. I had some line break. I actually know someone who had the same reel. They said they had the same problem, but I think my line was nicked. But I did lose one fish. Maybe it was due to the line, maybe it was the reel's fault, but I caught other big fish and didn't have that problem. So just so you know, how I mentioned graphite frames, there could be some issues you won't get with aluminum. That can exist. I think I paid $69 or $59 for this. Like I said, entry-level Daiwas, great reels, just can't go wrong for the all-around performance, torque. And if you're trying out gear ratios, like this is probably like a 6:3 to 1, and this happens to be a 7 to 1, and that's why I got it. I wanted to try 7 to 1. You don't know what gear ratio you want. Inevitably, depending on your budget, you're probably going to have to maybe get 1 or 2 starter reels. But hopefully this video with the gear ratios and everything will be able to clarify a little bit of that. So right now we're talking about components and price. So a little bit up the food chain of bait casters is this one is still in production. It's a Daiwa X Seller for $99.99. Now this would be the best $99.99 reel that I have ever seen to date, selling tackle going on 17 years. And there's a lot of reasons for this. It's absolutely fully loaded. You get that great Daiwa casting control there. Everything with the torque. I mean, this thing just spins magnificently. It has an unbelievable amount of cranking power. And believe it or not, I don't think 8 out of 10 $200-300 reels weren't that smooth, you know, when I started selling reels. So nice big thumb bar, great drag system. Like I said, Daiwas for their price point from start to finish usually have the reputation for the best drag systems. Fantastic gearing, an aluminum frame, but super lightweight. The reel doesn't weigh much. This happens to be a 7.3 to 1. And one thing you'll notice with your spool designs is you can actually compare it. They're both the same color, but you can see how much smaller that spool is, the Daiwa, compared to the Black Max. And that smaller spool is going to be as strong, but it's going to spin quicker. And it's also going to lay more line on, like if you run thicker braid. So if you don't need line capacity, that may not be an issue, but you get a lot more once you start bumping up to this price point. And also another reel I don't own, but Lou sells a reel for $79. It's a silver reel. That's a really good pick in between these two price points, the Lou's, the silver. But for all intents and purposes, for $99, I highly recommend, if you can, go to $99. Do research your gear ratios and what you need. And go with something like this, because you're getting the total package for $99.99. Now, what do you get on a reel above and beyond $99.99? This is a older gen Sitka, and this has something that's actually different that I tend not to recommend. It has a centrifugal pitch control, again. But if you have one pushed in and one pushed out, that's pretty much the default, and you're never going to have to readjust them. You would just use your line tension here. And again, it's got a lightweight spool, good torque. I haven't really used this reel a lot, a couple times. Good drag system, really, really tight gearing, solid package. Again, this is going to fit the bill, something like this, for 8 out of 10 anglers, and probably still the X Seller would too. But I just tend to like a magnet better if you're just starting out. They tend to just work a little bit better in the wind, but I didn't really encounter any backlashes with my Sitka. What happened with this side plate was, for some reason, when I fished it, it didn't quite lock down and it popped out on me. So again, depending on the conditions, you know, a magnet, you're never going to really have to pop it open. So we'll just go over the gear ratios. So we've went over the frames. We've went over the inside, the gearing, bearings. Again, it's not a number of bearings, it's the quality. You're going to get better quality bearings and gearing higher up the reel as you go. So if this would be your lowest gear ratio, this I think is like a 5-6 to 1. That's for cranking. You reel in less line per turn, but it keeps your lures, your crankbaits digging down deeper, longer. And the longer those crankbaits are deflecting off the bottom, the better your chances are of catching fish in cold water. You can find fish in cold water and get them on the low gear ratio. So if we bump up a little bit to, let's say, the 6.3 to 1, what's the 6.3 going to do? It's your all around. It's going to work, reel in maybe about 28, 29 inches of line per turn. Great reel for spring, summer, or fall. If you don't know what gear ratio you need, a 6.3 to 1 is usually my top pick. And then we'll just go right to the 7. This is, well, actually 7.3 to 1 on the X Seller. What does this do? If you're around a lot of weeds and you're hitting drop-offs and you want to get that lure up and out of those drop-offs fast for where those big bass live, and you want to cover a lot of water, higher gear ratio inevitably is the way to go, even though I do a lot of low gear ratio with crankbaits and stitching and a lot of the plastic rigs I run. Definitely have a time and a place for that high gear ratio. So that's gear ratios. I pretty much covered the spool designs. Generally, on a higher dollar spool, you're going to get a thinner one that's smaller. It's going to engage quicker, and everything else that's inside of baitcasters, try to cover it in a relatively short amount of time. So, oh, and then just one thing with the handles, you'll notice that most of your older reels tended to have a straight handle. A curved handle like this, you just get less wrist fatigue, and it almost has become the norm now. It just seems as though instead of cranking out like this, you can just crank in more like this, and it just seems to be more comfortable overall. So that to the left would be your old, and this would be the new. But again, that's minor in terms of preference. I mean, the main thing when you're choosing your baitcaster is going to be your price point and your gear ratio. So I hope that was able to answer some questions that anybody had about baitcasting. If you have any more, just ask me, leave some comments. I've had some new subscribers, 4 or 5 within the past week and a half. Thank you to those that have subscribed. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. The future of the channel, what I'm going to do for sure is I'd like to go out to Wampum Lake where I was at and get another big bass. And I'm going to be targeting warm water discharge for either crappie, largemouth, or walleye. I'd like to get out a few more times before there's some real solid ice. So there's a little bit more fishing left to go, even though we're already heading into middle of November. So thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing if you have not. And take care. And great fall fishing to you. I don't know if anybody up north is doing any ice fishing yet, but if you're doing that or getting ready for it, more power to you, because I'm not going to have any of that on this channel. So thanks for watching, and enjoy fall fishing, early winter fishing. Take care. Thank you.